Warm greetings to everyone. Today, I'm going to review a topic that many people around the world wanted me to address. It is the restoration of the purity, goodness, and messages of plants and agricultural products. Let there be flavors and scents again, such that our generation was able to experience in childhood. Our kids may not even know what a good tasting tomato, cucumber, or fruit is. A few years ago, my friend István Jakab and I discussed what new discoveries were made in the world. There were many special novelties. They recognized that nature, biology, works entirely differently than they had believed before that. Biologists and chemists see compounds, but in the background, something happens in secret that nobody has ever been able to figure out. Science just talks about what it knows, but not about what is out there. These new discoveries have motivated me to expand the focus of my attention of healing humans to plants as well. I will point out in my presentation today that the knowledge and the recognitions about plants applies to us humans as well. Except it is easier and simpler to see these things in plants. If you allow me, I will start by sharing some details of experiments. Here, I'm showing you what was performed in the United States. They had created a tool that can be used to map the feelings, thoughts, and speech of plants. You will soon see that there is a polygraph instrument which was initially used to study whether humans are telling the truth or they are lying. The polygraph is a highly sensitive instrument. First, I will show it when it is used to measure a man, and then later as it is used to measure a plant. We will soon see that the same instrument is being used to measure plants. Let's see the first experiment. This lady is being asked some provocative questions by the leader of the experiment. When the woman is not telling the truth, right at that moment, the polygraph indicates with a big swing of the needle that she is not being honest. In the next experiment, the polygraph device is attached to a plant leaf, not to humans. Let's see what is going to happen. We see the plant on the right side, to which the infinitely sensitive instrument is connected. The experimenter will begin to chop some lettuce in front of the plant. The plant immediately reacts. He feels pain when seeing a fellow plant being destroyed. Then, the scientist calls in other candidates and he asks them to pull a card randomly. You can see that only one gentleman pulls the card with the kill label. This person goes to the plant, tears the leaves, then breaks it in two. All the while, the lie detector polygraph is attached to another plant. In the next phase, people participating in the experiment are invited into the room one by one, and the plants are observed for their response to each individual. No matter with what kind of intent the participant look at the plant, nothing happens. However, when the man who has just crushed and broke the plant in two enters the room, the polygraph instantly reacts with strong signals. The plant appears fearful of becoming the next victim of the man. Scientific experiments have been developed so much that in places where a murder occurred and there happened to be a plant at the crime scene, the suspects were summoned while the polygraph was linked to the plant. The polygraph immediately signaled if the perpetrator entered the room. When crimes were committed, the police has successfully used this equipment for the identification of suspects. When we first see such a video, we may think, how interesting. But there is more to it than being a novelty. The plant also felt that the other participants of the experiment, even when pretending to wanting to do harm, hurting it was not their true intention. However, when the man who destroyed his cousin entered the room, even when not saying a word, even when looking at the plant, regardless, it immediately indicated that this individual was the perpetrator. Plants can feel, remember, and express all these. The next experiment is also from the United States. They take out small fish from an aquarium and put them in a jar. Then the researcher named Baxter goes into a room 3 doors down the hallway and places a polygraph on a plant. A timer is started. Subsequently, the scientist leaves the laboratory altogether. He leaves, so his presence would not affect the experiment. The timer triggers the action of the little fish being dropped into boiling water, where they immediately die. What's happening 3 rooms down, where the plant is linked to the polygraph? It starts to signal feverishly. This was the first experimental evidence that plants not only sense other plants, but also perceive pain and events of animals. This also registered during the experiments. Then the scientist comes back and looks at the timer to see when the little robot emptied the little fish into the boiling water. It also checks when the polygraph linked to the plant recorded the signal. When comparing the results, it is clear that the events happened at the exact same time. Plants feel plants. They sense animals. They can feel beetles or differentiate between small and large animals and can also sense people. They are also keenly aware of people's feelings. They know whether someone is telling the truth or is lying. In fact, they are constantly sending messages to us as plants since they understand and feel us. However, regretfully, people do not pay much attention to the messages of plants. The next experiment is on a mimosa. Many people know this lovely little plant. Its leaves close up should they get exposed to any external impact. In the experiment, scientists were looking for the answer to the question whether plants sleep and whether they dream. They injected ether under the mimosa, then covered the plant with a glass dome and waited for the effect. Certainly, many people recognize this anesthetic, which has been used in hospitals for a long time to sedate people. They waited for a few moments, then touched the plant, which did not react, even when, just like during human surgery, they cut leaves from the branches. And what happened? It did not react because the plant fell asleep. However, if a plant is able to sleep, it's yet another special trait. Sleeping and being awake beyond the physical implications, it is a characteristic trait of the soul. When we sleep, we bring our subconscious to the surface. And do plants sleep? And are they dreaming? Because if so, and the tests have already proven that yes, the plants can sleep, then they have souls. Or think that when plants are sleeping not only at night, but sleeping through the winter. They fall asleep in the autumn and get up in the spring. Information transmission is an universal means of communication of living beings, all through the morphogenetic field. Man has this ability, yet he rarely uses it. Nature, at the beginning of it all, came to life by creation. Dimensions and information were created. As information took on physical form in the universe, space and time were created. The first material particle that took form was hydrogen. The other elements, being helium, lithium, sodium, potassium, iron and others, formed by fusion. More and more complex minerals were created, and the more complex they became, the more complex information they were able to store. The nature of each element depends on the information that creates it. It determines the behavior and properties of the elements. All material appearances and manifestations in nature have a range of properties, have a nature that depends on what information they carry. Let's take the simplest things. Materia has physical properties. Energy is spread by vibrations and can be characterized by a wavy nature. Information, however, contains a lot more things. It has a specific nature and has unique patterns of behavior. When we are talking about such basic concepts, everybody should consider what is the material part in his own being. It can be touched. Think through that we have energies, and that these energies are all over, and there are things that are not matter, not energy, but still part of reality that are transmitted from a very different dimension. Such are our thoughts, our feelings, our relationships, our nature, our souls, and our spirits. It is not material and not energy, but a very different concept. Some people try to divide these worlds into dimensions, which is a very good approach. There are the three-dimensional things we see. Think of a beautiful flower field or a wheat field. These are three-dimensional things. But if someone takes a closer look into the depths of things, they will see that there is a visible reality that is three-dimensional. Then, in addition, there is a more subtle reality. This is the realm of energies. We also refer to it as the fourth dimension. Here we may also think about what Albert Einstein said, that light is sometimes materia, or it is sometimes vibration. It has a dual nature. Sometimes it is material, that is, small movements of smart particles, or it is vibration. Though, when we think about it, some material and vibration are still materia, but really just two types of manifestations of it. Once it is in the form of a certain material, or in the form of vibration, or sometimes in both of them. However, beyond these, there are even more realities, such as, for example, information. Information is a fifth-dimensional reality, since it no longer possesses substances or energy. Let's just state it boldly. Information is beyond this, representing much more. This information in the universe is trying to show itself. It is trying to take shape. The information always overrides physical laws. While I cannot influence the information at the physical level, things at the material and energy levels will change when I change the information. All of these are basic concepts we will discuss, so we may learn to possess and use the knowledge of how we can influence plants, animals, and humans. How can we influence the living creature so that we do not have to invest energy here? We had to tune our senses to a world well beyond the realm of energies. This is the world of information. In our invention, we have collected the information that created a significant number of existing elements, compounds, heavy metals, minerals, planets, bacteria, fungi, viruses, amino acids, plants, animals, and humans. We have collected the information of millions of materials, millions of living beings, because each plant, beetle, animal has a separate message, and each one is best in the world in something. Why something exists the way it does always depends on the information. That is why we have collected information of minerals, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and animals. Each crystal or other elemental material contains one piece of information. Plants, as they contain more than one substance, contain more information. Animals are made of more material and can carry more information. At the top of the development chain stands man. Almost all existing material on Earth and in the galaxy can be found in the human body. There are 108 main elements, and their compounds, of course, are in humans. The non-living is distinguished from the living, says science, by the fact that the non-living does not move, while the living does. That is a rather modest definition. If we look more closely at lifeless and living things, we see another enormous difference. There is no water in the lifeless. What we call living contains water. In fact, until the minerals had met water, there was no life on Earth. Water is a very special information carrier. It was able to create life from dead. When science says that whatever does not move is lifeless, we would be utterly surprised if we looked closer. If we were to examine the movements of the atoms and electrons inside, we would see just how much faster they speed about than the Earth does around the Sun, for example. Since they are stationary, they are being characterized as lifeless. Humans, standing at the peak, are composed of elements, water, and we may say that we are made of liquid crystal structures. Surely you have a television set at home with a liquid crystal projector. What prompts your TV monitor to display different images from moment to moment? Information does. Like the substances in our body, the minerals will move according to the information they receive through control signals from us and the environment. Vitamins, allergens, plants, animals, heavy metals, amino acids, and bacterial information collected form a matrix where everything is related to everything. Wherever something suffers damage within us, this will affect our whole body. And it's not just a problem in materials that can cause an issue. It could be a bad idea or a bad feeling that is enough to make a change in our nature, our informational field. Thank God, today we can measure this with the matrix Drops computer. As long as something is not measurable, it may perhaps be the way we think or believe it is, or it may not be. When measured, it is much more concrete, however. After the information was collected, the second task was to store this information. We had to find, record, and store many millions of pieces of information. Several things occurred to be a good choice. It could have been stored in crystals, just as the data is recorded on pen drives. In electronics, silicon crystals are used as memory into which the information is entered, then stored there. We decided that the storage media of information, if I can refer to it as such, would be water itself. Next, we had to face another challenge. Before, people were able to load information into water, or other could enter information in crystals. However, it soon disappeared from there. We had to solve the challenge of storing information in water so that it remained there permanently. This was one of the greatest challenges in our world. There was no such solution in the world until now. Most certainly, many people have heard of Luc Montagnier, the French Nobel Prize winner who proved the reality of teleportation a few years ago. I have been practicing this method for 25 years, but I did not even realize I was doing teleportation. The Nobel Prize winner scientists carried out this experiment in magnetic fields. I was able to work this out in an enclosure where tension is generated by crystals. This natural method further increased the transfer accuracy and the efficiency of information transfer. Teleportation is what I have used to extract millions of information patterns and transfer them to millions of liquid samples where they remain intact for 10, 20, 30 years in water. I would like to ask you a thought-provoking question. If in a family where usually everyone is eating almost the same food, such as the same breakfast, lunch, dinner, how could it be that there is a member of the family who, for 10 or 20 years, has had iron deficiency or has been experiencing bone thinning? Which, unfortunately, can now happen even at the age of 9 to 10 years. Or, how could the third family member have magnesium deficiency? And we could list other problems. The usual answer to this is that those family members do not get sufficient amounts of iron, magnesium, or calcium. However, if everyone is eating the same food in the family, how could it be that these important elements may be able to get into one and not the other? I think there is a fundamental misunderstanding in this area. Vitamins, minerals, trace elements get to everyone, yet while they may be built in, absorbed by some, that may not happen in others. Therefore, we do not have to think about giving 10 times more of something to someone who does not have any, because experience shows that even if we do that, almost nothing will get absorbed. We need to think about how to help the body so it can build in the missing element of its own. There are people that have been taking iron supplements for 10 to 20 years. And they might as well continue doing that for another 10 to 20 years if all they are trying to do is taking those supplements. Some people have taken calcium for 10 to 20 years and their bones do not strengthen one bit. Yet they are still hoping. How is it that the other person does not need to do this? It is because he has the information that helps him bind iron, calcium, magnesium. Each mineral element has its own nature and its associated properties. Take iron, for example. Iron is a rigid, hard, solid element. If someone's soul is hurt in her childhood or adulthood, let's say, for example, a woman is married and her mother-in-law does not speak to her in a respectful manner, this hardness will almost be blocked in her nature. If she lacks the information pattern of hardness, firmness, from that moment, she will not be able to build iron into her body. No matter the quantity of iron she ingests or otherwise gets from the outside. The question is it possible to restore the soul after this crippling blow? The answer is yes. If we can restore the disturbed information field of the lady in the example, her body will be able to integrate iron again. Numerous plant and animal experiments also support how quickly, within a few days, order is restored once they receive the appropriate information. Take, for example, that I meet a certain information pattern. Because information has some unique characteristics, when I meet the perfect information in my own self, the information pattern will want to recreate itself. In other words, it restores order. This principle works in plants, animals, and humans. All lifeless and living things are composed of the same minerals. It is just that there is more in some and less in others. By aligning to information patterns, our fine etheric bodies can be restored, then they, in turn, will reset our coarser energy and physical bodies. Science believes that a new element can only be created by hot fusion, more precisely by nuclear fusion. It is believed that a new element will be created when two existing elements are collided at temperatures ranges of the thousands of degrees or even higher. They collide, for example, two hydrogen atoms and they get helium, or they collide heliums to get lithium. Thousands, 10,000s of degrees, huge gravity are needed to create new elements. This is science. Science talks about what it knows, but it is not about what exists. We will see experiments where, as it turns out, there is no need for tens of thousands of degrees of heat and huge gravity to create new elements. All of this can be done by plants, animals, and humans and body temperature. They can produce substances they do not consume, drink, or breathe. They simply create those elements themselves. This is cold fusion. Let's see the first experiments. They examined the composition of plants. They laid grass on very poor quality soil. When the grass sprouted, they examined what kinds of elements could be found in the grass itself. They knew exactly what was in the ground. They knew what was in the rainwater and in the irrigation water and in the air. They found many elements that were not even in the vicinity of the experimental grounds. They were not in the soil, or in the water, or even in the air. The question of how did these elements get in the grass may be asked. It is not that difficult to figure out the answer, though they could have been created only one way. That is, the plant produced them through some mysterious process. Plants have cold fusion capabilities, which means they can create anything they require from anything they have available. Many think that when a plant sprouts from the ground, it collects mineral elements from it, builds them into itself, and thus grows. Now imagine there is this big forest where people planted tree seedlings a while ago, and over time the trees grew up. Has anyone experienced that as the trees grow, the soil disappears? The soil does not disappear anywhere. Then how does the tree grow? The tree binds carbon dioxide, subtracts carbon, which it then uses to grow its body, then releases the oxygen, which we need to be able to survive. If there weren't any plants, there would be no oxygen. If there weren't any plants, animals and humans would not have anything to eat. We're totally dependent on plants. The plant binds carbon, since that is what it uses to build its body. And whatever material the plant needs will produce from carbon. It is capable of producing any kind of material it needs. Do we not know that herbs contain certain compounds? Many people believe that it is possible because where the plant lives, in the soil, there are elements which the plant will absorb, and that is how it will possess those certain compounds. However, that is not how it works. Anywhere on the planet, the plant breathes in carbon dioxide, releases oxygen, and from carbon dioxide, using cold fusion at body temperature, creates any kind of element it needs. Many people are familiar with the willow standing on lake shores or riverbanks. An ancient tradition is to take a feverish patient around a tree 3 times and humbly ask the tree to help when this person has high fever that cannot be brought down with medication. Miraculously, the fever will drop after this. Willow-like trees are also referred to as salicides, by the way. In Latin, they are referred to as salicaceae because they carry a lot of salicyle. And the reason they have so much of this compound is not because the soil is abundant of this mineral, rather, the willow carries the information pattern it can use to manufacture salicyle. If you're familiar with the many types of fever medication, the premise is salicyle. One can get to this information by extracting the salicyle from the tree, putting it into a pill, then taking that medication. Or another way to do this is to get to the tree and as the spirit of the tree, its information body, to help. The point here for us is the plant, out of nothing, can create something. A plant is not the only one that can do this. A researcher took an egg, burned it to ashes, and then examined how much calcium there was in the egg whites and the yolk. És amikor hamu lett belőle, megvizsgálta, hogy a tojás fehérjébe és a sárgájába mennyi kálcium van. He then took note of the measurement. Then using another egg, he waited until a little chicken hatched, and when that poked his head out of the egg, he took out the chicken. He cooked it to ashes, such is a scientific experiment, and examined how much calcium there was in the chicken's ashes.
Mennyi kálcium van?
He found 6 times more calcium than he did in the egg white and yolk. An egg is a closed system. How did 6 times more calcium end up in the chick? I think you already know the answer. The little chick had produced it with cold fusion, and when a mother gives birth to a couple of children, 3, 8, or even 10, where do the children get so much calcium? Suck it out of their mother? Or get it from what mom eats? No. A fetus is also able to build his own body to produce any element. There's only one condition that has to be satisfied for this, and that is a coherent, balanced environment. Spiritual calm should exist. Because if there is decoherence, there is chaos around, then the information body cannot create itself. If anyone falls ill, he signals that there is no balance, there is decoherence in his mind, in his thoughts, in his feelings, in his environment. If someone is able to balance it all, what will be the consequences? The healthy soul corrects the sick body without taking iron supplements if someone is iron deficient. His body can manufacture iron from other materials. Many people have heard of the following example where Eskimos were studied. They eat fish, eat seals, and never eat vitamin C. Mysteriously, there was just as much vitamin C in Eskimos as in European or African humans. Where did vitamin C come from? I think you already know the answer. The body produced it for itself by fusion. Was it done at more than 10,000 degrees? No, it was performed at body temperature. Was some kind of mysterious energy required for this? No, for this, information is needed. For information to be able to work, a certain calm in the soul is needed. We hear about experiments, and behind those experiments, something magical is hiding. Now let me show you a few skin-related problems. In the first case, a gentleman was burned and needed skin transplant. He's going to look like this all his life. In the second, a child has a very serious eczema on his face. In the third, a lady has a case of rosacea. The next, a gentleman's healing exhibiting a keloid scar. Normally, if someone gets scratched, he's almost healed without a trace. But if there is a problem in the information field of the human body, that is not the case. Here we are seeing a bad case of rosacea on the skin, which is one of the telltale signs of colitis which is projected on the face. Please take note of these pictures. Such skin marks are considered average for these illnesses. Now let's look at what happens when we give someone the perfect information of the skin in the form of matrix drops. The first gentleman we see is burned. He suffered 3rd, 4th degree burns. They told him that he will always see traces of the burn on his face as long as he lives. Traces of burn injuries do not disappear without a trace, typically unless the skin and the body needs the perfect information. In that case, it can get realigned. A fundamental rule in quantum physics is that information always tries to create identical patterns with itself. The body needs only one thing for this: coherence. That is to say, our environment should be balanced and should meet the pure information. In this case, we do not deal with materials or energies, but with a dimension above all these information. You can see the gentleman whose skin tissue, after receiving the pure information of the skin using matrix drops, perfectly regenerated within 3 weeks. This young girl, you see, now suffered an accident. She fell off a bicycle. Imagine the parents and the little girl's despair. Will my face look like this all as long as I live? Immediately after the accident, she received matrix drops containing the information of cells that build up the skin. It's not even possible anymore to tell where the child's face was damaged. This was not done with materia or energies. And if I may say, this is not healing, it's realignment to the perfect information. We've heard it during this presentation that information has a trait that it can create itself in different dimensions. It is trying to restore perfection. We see a young man from Szeged. He suffered a bicycle accident. 4 of his teeth broke out and they took him to the clinic in Szeged in a terrible state. The dental surgeon said that they might try to reinsert his broken teeth, but there is only a small chance that they will remain in place. His mom is a pharmacist and told the surgeon that she could help improve his son's chances. She knows of a solution, and if the child gets the perfect matrix drops information for his trauma, then she is very confident that the broken teeth will take hold after reinsertion. While this is a viable path when using traditional medical methods, the odds of a positive outcome are low, especially in such a big accident. The young man received the appropriate information in the form of matrix drops, and it's been 2 months since. The teeth were perfectly restored and remain in their place. He was able to keep all 4 original teeth and the skin on his face was perfectly regenerated. Osteoporosis today is a common disease. Everyone is trying to take calcium in all kinds of varieties, only the so desired bone building does not take place. Unfortunately, in many cases, this method cannot even stop further deterioration. Nonetheless, many try to see if they will be the first people to succeed. Hope is the last thing to die. Nowadays, with a computer scan, in a few minutes, anyone can learn the degree of osteoporosis in his bones. If we know that there is a matrix drops product containing the information of bone, the chance of bone building will multiply. The following are information of calcium and its compounds: calcium fluoratum, calcium sulfuricum, calcium phosphoricum. These are the information of necessary substances and compounds. However, we need to know that it is in vain to try to rebuild bone as long as the body is full of heavy metals. Unfortunately, in the past 30-40 years, heavy metals have been extensively used in preservatives. Spraying agents have been fed into our bodies through food, and they settle in our bones and muscles. As long as the heavy metal is inside the bones, it's useless to try to send in calcium, as there is no room for it. First thing is to clear out heavy metals. It has been a big problem that no instrument has ever existed heavy metals overloads in the body. The world's first equipment capable of measuring heavy metal overloads in the body is the matrix drops computer. Matrix drops is the first information carrier product that is capable of emptying heavy metals from humans. We see a 9-year-old boy whose leg had been in a cast for a year. On the X-ray image, it is clearly visible that the bone disappeared from the femur's head and the hip bone notch. Until now, people suffering from this disease have been limping all their lives due to the shortening of the bone and the constant pain they experience. Heavy metals often accumulate in bones. We begin to restore bones by first removing heavy metals from them. We can do all this with information. Heavy metals don't belong there. They are just intruders, and with the perfect information they can be forced from the body. And once we've gotten rid of the heavy metals from the thinned, dead bone, we can start rebuilding with the information of bone. In the child's case presented here, the rotating bones and the skeletal structure of the hip notch were restored within 6 months. This 9-year-old boy has a father and mother who are both doctors. The mother is engaged in research and bone marrow transplantation with the best trained and qualified professionals of the field. For a year, no matter what they gave to the boy or whatever they tried to do, they could not solve this difficult task. After a year, his dad asked for help from us. By following the matrix drops protocol, after 6 months, his child has recovered. How many children and adults are suffering from osteoporosis? And please understand, I'm not curing anyone here, but rather the body cures itself. With matrix drops, it can get back to the order it was thrown out of. And it's no secret that this child got sick because of emotional circumstances in the family became tragic for him. When I shared this with the parents, they were able to reconcile this serious situation as well. Materials and energy are manifestations of materia. Light has a dual nature. It is a particle or wave. Energy, bioresonance are all manifestations of the material world, but information forms a new dimension beyond materia and energy. The wonderful stories I've described were inspired by information. It was obvious that the undesirable heavy metals have to be dematerialized. We have to transfer material into information. However, in the case of the missing calcium information, we have to materialize. We don't do this with energy, but rather with information. This is a new reality. Plants are doing this by photosynthesis. They can produce any material they need from carbon dioxide. Mammals, animals, humans are able to do this with the assistance of enzymes. When there's a perfect spiritual environment, the organism can produce anything by means of alchemic methods. What we have discovered is that this perfect restorative mechanism can be encouraged. And how? With a perfect information environment and targeted matrix drops products. We see farm fields from Ireland. Today, not only humans or animals consume these matrix drops products, but we spray thousands of acres with matrix drops with programmed waters. Plants and animals may be more responsive to information than humans because they do not have any doubt. They do not become experts suddenly. They accept the perfect information and align to them. Today, at countless places in the world, gardeners, biofarmers, and private people use these drops. We use small quantities of matrix drops in 10 liters, 100 liters, or even 1,000 liters of water and apply this to the plants through spraying, and we do not use any pesticide agents. Fungi disappear, pests disappear, plant lice leave our garden, snails leave our plantations. 3 independent research institutes assessed matrix drops products for a year. All 3 research institutes sprayed without chemicals or fertilizers, and using only matrix drops, they observed 10, 20, 48% increase in crop yields. Scientific plant research institutes have verified the reality of this new technology. With substances and energies, compounds can be affected. This is the realm of chemistry and biochemistry. Information, however, does not affect the compounds, but they are able to create new substances. Think about it. A plant produces potassium, calcium, magnesium by itself from the carbon molecule. If this detail were shared at a chemistry or biology congress, people would stand up and leave saying this is impossible. It is true that this is not existing in science, but plants, animals, and humans do not know it is impossible and perform it anyway. Yet scientifically, there is no such thing as material transforming into another material. However, practice shows that the world knows this, and this is how it operates. I will show you another short movie.
So what might these remarkable designs mean? Here are some two-dimensional versions that seem to be revealing the torus in 3D.
What people see at crop circles is a projection in two-dimensional space, but something happened there in three-dimensional space. That is what you see here. Something happened and an imprint of that event stayed behind.
And here is the vector equilibrium.
And how interesting, this did not happen on a hayfield, cornfield, or rice field.
And the related pattern of 64 that we saw encoded in the arts of
Rather,
so many
crop
ancient
circles
cultures.
appear on grain fields. Our attention is being called to something from the other side. What we saw in two-dimensional space, we can now look at in three dimensions.
His three-dimensional version of the Osirian symbol starts with the vector equilibrium, a perfectly balanced force field with 12 equal energy lines radiating out. They stabilize its center like the 12 spokes of a wheel. The primary pattern of balanced energy flow around this structure is the torus. Here we expand to the next larger scale with a total of 64 pyramids called tetrahedra. If we then put spheres in representing the toroidal energy field surrounding each of the pyramids, and then we drop away the pyramids, we end up with a matrix that is, amazingly, an exact overlay for the Osirian icon. A three-dimensional model of the same pattern.
The pattern, says the
burned into
narrator,
rock wall
is the
of
same,
Egyptian
the
temple
matrix.
thousands of years ago.
The same pattern as it had been written on the walls of the Egyptian pyramids thousands of years ago. This matrix could now be seen in three-dimensional space in the form of spheres built on each other. Today, what does someone thinking in a narrow perspective, a single-dimensional plane, see from this? As most people only see in two-dimensional plane, not in three dimensions, they see crop circles which are two-dimensional imprints of space. It is an imprint. It is the same as when I pick up a glass from the table which leaves a print. If someone were to tell this observer that this is an imprint of a glass, and that observer, let's say, could not think in multiple dimensions, they would ask, "What do you mean a glass?" Yet others looking at the same thing may even say there was something in that glass before. Our hero might ask, how could there be anything in a circle? There is only a circle on the table here. Why did these circles appear in grain fields? Certainly most of you are familiar with the genetic modification of grain. Today, grain contains 70 times more gluten than it did 40 years ago. What does the Creator think about this? What does the Matrix say about it? The Creator cannot stand behind all this. The Matrix has left these realms. Crop circles are warnings. Can we see what the 70-fold increase in gluten has done to people during the last few years? People are digesting themselves. Here we see a walnut grove. Very nice people came to me with grave concern. No secret that starting in Bácska, an artificial pest has been spread and now this disease is gaining ground in Hungary. There are some eager voices proclaiming that all walnut trees would need to be destroyed because they are infected. This is an artificially triggered disease. What is the biggest problem with this all? It is the fact that in the soul of the Hungarian people, the walnut tree is also a symbol of the future. Yet when the command is issued, all walnut trees must be cut down. Here's the first walnut plantation where we stopped this infection. And would you like to know how? With matrix drops. And the most shocking thing about it all is the photos. The matrix has already reappeared. The field is rebuilt because it is a matrix field. Obviously, these damaged matrix fields are recovered. You have certainly heard a lot about genetic research. Now I would like to highlight some detail Dr. Howard Temin has proven. It is true that genes contain good and bad information and that we bring predispositions to illnesses of our ancestors.
Az őseinktől ugye az ő betegségre való hajlamunkat.
But this information will only come to life when there is fertile ground in the environment.
Ha a környezetbe táptalajra kapnak.
If I can shape the environment in the direction of coherence, it does not matter if I have hereditary illnesses of my grandfather, my grandmother and my mother, as there will be nothing to turn the key and they will not get activated. This is epigenetics, and it is valid for humans, animals and plants as well. The secret is that if there are chaotic conditions around us, spraying agents, fertilizers, overpowering loads on our nervous system, then our matrix is damaged, and this is where bad things can come from. However, if we can harmonize our day-to-day lifestyle, thoughts and energies, then we can align to the perfect information. And that is health itself. We will see flagship farms where matrix drops are used to spray vegetables, fruits, explants. Matrix drops are products where water contains information. They set the field matrix, and it can be seen how plants appear without any chemicals, as well as how plants look without this information. Healthy peppers, peppers infected with fungus. In practice, if someone does not put pesticides right beneath the radish, wireworm will destroy all of it. In our case, matrix drops were used instead of poisons and no worms appeared. In the neighboring farms, they even ate the leaves. Cabbage sprayed matrix drops without matrix drops. Vineyards sprayed with matrix drops in the Tokaj region, in the vicinity of Saxard, and now in California also. Many wine growers do not use chemicals anymore, only matrix drops. With matrix drops? Without. It should be considered that preservatives have to be used in drugs and injections. These are heavy metals which can then enter the body and remain inside as they cannot be emptied. We had to devise a procedure that would empty, drain heavy metals from bones, muscles and cells. Pesticide agents in sprays also use a lot of heavy metals as they must be preserved. All true, but there is a truth in nature. It is the following. Heavy metals are bound by fungi so they do not enter the plants. In return, plants produce sugars and feed the fungi. Imagine when orchards, vines, plants are sprayed with some kind of pesticide agent, which quite certainly contain heavy metals. What are fungi doing? They are coming to consume heavy metal. That is, more and more spraying, so more and more fungi are coming. What does a vineyard or apple farmer see? That powdery mildew, fusarium, is coming. These are all types of fungus. The fungus has the task of eating heavy metals, and the more they are spraying against fungi, the more heavy metals and fungus they get. Should we not stop this vicious circle? Several experimental stations are already operating in Hungary where they are spraying with information. And please allow me to share with pride that significant areas in Ireland are being sprayed with matrix drops only. Here, cattle can be driven to the grazing ground a month earlier than before. The milk of these cows contain higher milk fat. We can see soon how these calves express their gratitude for this. Animals are very grateful as well. Perhaps a license from NABIH does not have much meaning to you, but it is good to know today 3 independent scientific institutes need to examine a new product.
dolgot bevizsgáltatni, ezek többé.
These are multi-year experiments, and if the results show that a product works, they publish qualified results. This is when the NABIC office will issue the permit which authorizes someone to stand in front of the public and make statements about the product. As I'm standing here today, I can proudly tell you that the permit has been issued for our Matrix Drops products. You can see in the apricot orchard that there was a 48 to 51% increase in crop yields. Here they are looking at the size, color and shape of the apricots. Millions of things are examined, and of course matters how much produce a farmer is going to harvest. This equipment, the Matrix Drops computer, does not measure materia and does not measure energy. It is the first device that can extract information from the soil, information from humans, animals and plants. What is common in us? In each of us there are minerals. Some have more, some have less, but certainly humans contain most types. Since all minerals can be found in us, the characteristic traits of all of these can also be found in us. And what kind of temperament I will have mostly depend on how I am able to control my nature, which is made up of all these different elements. How great it is to have an orientation point that I can adjust to when I feel I must practice some humility. This is similar to when I press the reset button on a computer. It then reboots, and when it is up, it's running again perfectly. I'm eager to show you such a new opportunity. We can learn a lot from plants and minerals and from these Matrix Drops essences. And remember, the attribute of the essence of information is that by being perfect, whatever it creates, then you will be identical with itself. Perfect creates perfect. It is a delightful experience when we spray an area and then measure it with a pendulum or with a radiostat measuring rod. Children are measuring the aura of the plant. It matters a great deal whether the lawn or a tree has a 5 to 10 centimeter aura or a 5 to 6 meter aura. If someone sprays his home garden, he can feel his plants gently caressing him. While strolling in the garden, plants' touch can be felt. Of course, we coddle our plants first with our care with Matrix Drops information. In a table, an agronomist friend of mine recorded when he sprayed his fruit trees with Matrix Drops, which are purified, programmed waters for the first, the second, the third and the fourth time. Imagine that for this spraying there is a 10-liter sprayer with 25 milliliter Matrix Drops poured in. This small amount reprograms the water, just like when you throw kefir yeast in milk and you'll have kefir in the morning. The information passes through the water immediately, and if I spray it, the perfect information will get to each and every cell of the plant through the aura. And as the plant improves, its emanation increases, which can be measured with a wand. After 3, 4, 5 spraying, the plants will have 9 to 10 meters of aura, which will not shrink if we spray once a week. Enchanting. We people forgot how much we are dependent on plants. If there were no plants, there would be no oxygen. If there were no plants, there would be not food. The relationship with our plant is like the relationship between the child and his parents. It is total dependence. It is true, yet the problem is that man's nature dictates that he does not like to be dependent on anyone. Man thinks that depending on someone is a sign of weakness and vulnerability. We do not like to be reminded that we are dependent on someone. It often happens with people that they will start hating those whom they are most dependent on because they feel they are not really free. People often hate those the most that they are getting the most from. This is how many feel towards plants. too.
érzelmekkel is. Nagyon sok emberek
Many people do not even want to know that plants live, feel, think, and that plants sleep, dream, and give life.
álmodnak, életet adnak nekünk.
They say, do not worry about them, they are almost like minerals. Man will do everything to forget that he is dependent on plants, even if he feels he is the master of the world. In Ireland, after the pastures were working very well and yields were increasing, farmers came to me that they were having a very difficult time when their animals were giving birth. Many cases, 2-3 people have to help to get the calf out of the cows. Calving is usually easy for animals, but for cows, it's not the case. 3-4 people have to pull the small calf out of the cow. They asked if I could help. Of course I could, I said. I prepared matrix drops for cows, which facilitated the dilation process. This farmer has 200 cows. His neighbors and the veterinarian had been sleeping in the barn before for weeks while his 200 cows gave birth. He took the matrix drops I prepared, poured a small amount into the drinking trough of the animals and waited for the result. The first calf came to light without assistance, then the second and the third. He slept out in the barn anyway just to make sure, but then after seeing calves dropping out of the cows unassisted, the next night too, he went home. In 2 weeks, all 200 cows gave birth, unassisted. A lovely, expecting mother asked me also if I could help because she's really afraid of giving birth. Of course, I answered. I have the information which I can prepare both for the fetus and the mother for the birth. The fetus will adjust to the perfect information, and when it comes to the moment of birth, here, of course, I refer to dilation, the detachment of the placenta, and for other things, there are information patterns as well. The mother was taking the drops when the time came, went to the hospital, labored for an hour, and then pushing came. When she tried to push for the third time to help the child come to this world, the doctor told her there is no need to push anymore. The baby is already out. So the birth was so easy, she did not even notice that the baby was already out. There is an order in nature, in perfection, and thank God, we still have the ability to realign to perfect. Let me say that the seduction is far greater to be imperfect. However, everyone has to make a decision what to align to. And one more thing, it is never too late. This decision can be made at any time. It is a little bit easier with plants and animals since they do not think whether they can do something. They always align themselves to perfection. However, man will pretend to know, and if I could put it this way, makes things more difficult to himself. Plant lice are terribly afraid of ladybugs because those eat such lice. That is why I took the information of the ladybug into the matrix, and when I sprayed onto the roses, the lice are fleeing because they think the ladybug is there. It is the ladybug's information that is in the field. A dear friend of mine came to me sharing that he had a few strawberry plants, but the snails are always eating them. We then made a matrix drop solution. He sprayed his small garden with it, and the snails could not flee fast enough from his yard. The situation is the same with fungi. We address the challenge with information. We have information for injuries, for circumstances when there is too much rain, for example. And also when there are 2 to 3 weeks of drought, we can tell the plants to take care of themselves. If the farmer leaves, plants wither, feel sad. They can be prepared for this though. With the sorrow remedy for the plants, they may feel consolation until the farmer comes home in 2 weeks. We prepared a different solution for lawns for blooming. For the vine growers, we had to invent a brand new system since they applied so much heavy metal to their lands that first, these certain elements had to be eliminated. Many people know how good nettle is. It is full of iron, but we do not give iron with matrix drops. We actually give the information of iron to plants. From the carbon they break down from carbon dioxide, they will produce iron for themselves using cold fusion based on the information of iron we give them. The plant produces phosphorus, sulfur for itself too, if we supply the information of iron, phosphorus, sulfur in the matrix field. We could ask, why did it not produce it in the first place? Because when someone uses chemicals and fertilizers, he makes his plants deaf mute and they cannot function properly. Deaf mute what small gardens and plantations become, but as they receive the information, they naturally communicate again. A lot of people are struggling with mites on the leaves that suck the life out of the leaves. There are non-vegetarian mites too, though. These are the mite-eating mites which come and eat the vegetarian ones. What do you think happens when we spray out the information of the mite-eating mite into the matrix field? Mites are running in panic. They leave the plantation without us spreading any nerve agent onto them. Here you can see a little girl. Her father sprayed the strawberries with snail repellent information, and the snails did not know what to do, so they left the strawberries and started up the wall. They fled, climbing up the wall. The little girl is laughing. "Dad, what just happened here?" "I'm spraying with my matrix drops, honey," replied his father. We also have found information for the bees. Many beekeepers came to me. There's a bee mite that sticks to the bees, sucks the blood, which then kills these good insects. There is tremendous destruction. Globally, more than half of the world's bee population disappeared. They cannot stop this bee mite, whatever they give it. Those putting my solution in bees' drinking water will strengthen the bees, and since there is also information in the matrix drops against mice, those will leave the hive. In the United States, there is also a campaign to save the bees. We have submitted our project to the White House for evaluation. Our products are being used on a lot of farms already, and a lot of people are using these matrix drops. Heavy metals are one of the biggest challenges of our time, as every food is full of them, just as all fruits and all vegetables. Reading studies and looking on the internet, I found how much heavy metal is in a man. This is when I came face to face with the fact that 8 to 10 kilograms of heavy metal could be in an adult individual. First I thought that number was mistakenly published. I asked prosectors what have they experienced. Some of them, having been on the field for 20 to 30 years, said that long ago, when they were performing an autopsy, they saw the color of the muscle. Today even people's muscles are gray. The bones are full of heavy metals. In Los Angeles, I had a matrix drops computer presentation. There were long lines of professors, scientists, and I asked what did they found best in the invention. This was the first time when I realized that there has been no instruments that could measure heavy metal overloads. It cannot be detected in blood, urine, or in stool because it is deposited in the bone. This is the first instrument. They were very pleased with the epoch-making fact that not only is heavy metal detection possible, but with information, it is also possible to send them out of the body. With this, a series of problems can be solved. If someone sprays a garden or land with these particular products, he can fully go back to using only information management solutions after 2 years. 1 liter of water requires a third bottle of matrix drops, 1 bottle for 10 liters, and as quantity increases, less and less is required proportionally. Anyone spraying with 2,000 liters of water would need to use 1.5 liters of matrix drops. Its cost is a fraction of conventional pesticides.
mint a hagyományos perletezőszerek.
Plants are constantly talking to us, but people rarely pay attention
De
to
az
them.
emberek ritkán figyelnek oda a növényekre.
Many times, quantum physics phenomena depend on the mode of questioning.
És feltevéstől függnek.
Observe yourselves. When you get a question, you make a decision and answer, but until you get a question, nothing happens.
Kapnak kérdést, nem történik semmi. A
This computer is designed to pose 8 million questions to the human heart field in a half minute, and man will provide 8 million answers.
mezejéhez. És az ember 8 millió kérdésre ad választ. És ha valaki
And if one is able to meditate through him, his animals and plants can be measured to find out what their needs are.
hogy azoknak mire van szüksége. Az egyik kedvenc
Nobel laureate Albert Szent-Györgyi said,
mondta,
because the molecular structure of water is the essence of all life, the man who can control this structure in the cell will be able to change the world.
aki tudja ezt a struktúrát a sejtben, meg fogja tudni változtatni a világot. Én nagyon
I truly hope that those who get matrix drops will be able to show themselves through their example, that they are able to change their own world and the world of their environment.
környezetük világát is.
I would like to thank the Creator for enabling me to share this knowledge with you.
Hogy ezt a tudást tolmácsolni tudjam önök felé. Nagyon szépen
Thank you very much for your kind attention, and if you allow me, I'd like to ask some volunteers to participate in an experiment.
néhány jelentkezőt. Itt van egy
Here's a nice orchid, and I want to show you what happens when it gets matrix drops information.
ha kap egy mátrix információt.
It will receive the number 2001 matrix drops information.
Ki esetleg tud
Anyone who can perhaps measure with a wand or with a pendulum or can sense plants' aura by hand, please come out. I would ask 3, 4, 5 people to come and let's see how big the aura of the orchid is now. Let's give it a little matrix drops and then measure it again. Now let's measure how big the plant's aura is. Yes, these measurements show that the aura is about 50 centimeters around and about everybody has that value. Good.
Én úgy látom, hogy olyan 50 centi körül megállnak ezek a mérések. Körülbelül mindenkinél ennyi az érték. Jó?
I would like to ask for a little patience. Spraying with matrix drops is not like spraying with a chemical agent where every leaf has to be drenched, because if you miss a leaf somewhere, there's already fungus or an attack.
A gomba vagy a támadás. Az aurájában
We gently apply this information in the auras of plants and see what happens.
mi történik? A növény ráhangol,
The plant tunes to the information and seeks to take on the perfect state just as its ancestors did, once lived in the perfect condition.
megéltek a tökéletes körülményükbe. És most
Now, please measure how much the orchid's aura has grown.
hát valahol
The measurements are subjective, but when I look at the common result,
de ha most
what was about 60 centimeters originally now grew to approximately 6 meters.
megből lett, körülbelül 6 méter,
This is about 10 times the inertial value. Its aura is 10 times of what it was before.
mit tetszenek gondolni?
What do you think? Do pests attack strong or weak plants? Always the weak.
Gyöngyék. És ha
And what if the plant is strong? Pests avoid it. Thank you very much for your attention.
kívánom, hogy
I wish you will be able to try these products, take part of it, and not just you, but take some to your plants and animals.
növényeiknek és az állataiknak is. Istenek köszönjük. Köszönjük szépen. Köszönjük szépen.
God bless you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You are very kind, and I know who the praise and applause is for, our Creator. I'm glad that I was able to communicate this message from Him to you.